Om
Sadaशिवसमारम्भां
शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परा ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति. So we will move on to the next mantra, which is mantra number 5 of the second chapter. So we will chant. Iha ched vedi tatha satyamasti.
इह चेदेतत्सत्यमस्ति
चेदिहा वेदितमहति विनिष्ठिः.
न चेदिहा वेदिमहति निष्टिः
भूतेषु भूतेषु विचित्य धीराः.
भूतेषु विचित्यधीराः
प्रेत्यास्मल्लोकादमृता भवन्ति.
प्रेत्यास्मल्लोकात् अमृता भवन्ति.
Okay, so I'm muting y'all. So iha, you have to break that up. Iha chet vedita atha satyamasti. That is the first quarter. Iha, here. Chet, if. Iha chet avedita atha satyamasti. So avedita means if one knows. So iha chet avedita, if one knows, atha satyamasti. Then there is, the truth has been acquired. So that is the first quarter. Let us look at that. Iha eva chet. Iha means here, in this current Manushya Janma itself, in this current human birth. Iha eva, here itself, in this current human birth itself, chet. If, supposing, in this human birth, avedita, supposing a person understands what is Atma, supposing a person acquires Atma Jnanam. And what kind of person can acquire that? So, Shankara says, Adhikritta Manushyaha, a Manushyaha who is a Adhikari. So, he must be a Vaidika accepting Veda Pramanam, and he must have the necessary qualifications. The Sadhana Chatushta Sampannaha, Viveka, Vairagya, Shat Sampatti, Mumukshutvam, he must have. And suppose such a person knows the Atma, and Shankara carefully adds over, Yathoktena Prakarena. He must know the Atma in the manner prescribed in this Upanishad. And the Atma must be known. Atma has been described in what words in this Upanishad? In the Shruti so far, what is the way in which Atma is to be known?
Pratibodha viditam.
Pratibodha viditam matam.
Viditam matam.
And what does that mean?
In every thought and everything, I see Brahma.
Well, anybody wants to improve on that?
Yeah.
As myself.
And that's my, yes. Me.
In every thought, in every experience, the content of every thought and experience is what? Brahman alone. And what one doesn't say I see Brahman. Because the moment you say I see Brahman, what has happened? Brahman for you is an object. And therefore you are the subject and Brahman is the object. That is not the way. Yathoktena prakarena means in the manner described in the Upanishad, Brahman is understood as the content present in every experience and every thought. And that Brahman is I alone. Athaha, then, Satyam Asti. That is truth. And where in this life, human life, one has gained the Satyam. And Satyam is there in the Moolam over here. So Shankara gives 4 different meanings for it. Each of them is very, very meaningful. So the first meaning he says is Satyam means Avinashaha, indestructible, immortal. So if this knowledge that I am the content of every experience is understood, then I become immortal. I become indestructible. Then the second one he says is Arthavatta. Life becomes meaningful only if this Atma Jnanam is gained. So first meaning is Avinashaha. Second meaning is Arthavatta, meaningful. Third meaning is Sadbhavaha. Shankara doesn't define, but Anandagiri in his commentary writes Sadbhavaha means Sadhu Bhavaha, which is the khyati, the glory. So human life becomes glorious only if you get Atmajnanam. So that is Sadbhavaha. And in the fourth one, Shankara says is Paramarthata. The Paramarthika Satyam it is. That knowledge brings you the understanding that I am no other than the Paramarthika Satyam Brahma. So that is the first quarter. The second quarter says, Nached iha avedita mahati vanishtaha. Nachet. But if iha, here in this human life, while having a human body, so nachet iha means while being alive in this Manusha Janma, supposing the qualified person, the Adhikrita, the Adhikari, the Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampanna Adhikari. Why does he say this? Because when a person is adhikritaha, he has the possibility of acquiring this jnana. And supposing na chet iha avedita, he does not know. He does not acquire this atmajnanam in spite of being an adhikari. Then what? Then tada, he says mahati vinishtaha. Mahati means anantaha, infinite. Vinishtihi means vinashanam, loss. So he says, then in that case, if that person doesn't acquire the Atmajnanam in this life, in spite of having been born as a human and having had sadhana chatushtayam, in spite of that, if he doesn't acquire this jnanam, then there is mahati vinashanam, there is very mahati anantaha, infinite loss. Infinite loss means what? Why does he say there is infinite loss? What is he losing?
Not knowing himself.
So why is that infinite?
Because he is Brahman. I am Brahman. Everything is Brahman. And that is
Brahman is
infinite.
infinite. And if you don't get Brahman, then you have lost the infinite. So loss of the infinite is an infinite loss. And Shankara adds, and therefore it results in what? Perpetuation of samsara. And this samsara is what? Janma, Jara, Maranadi, Prabandha. The cycle of Janma, birth, Jara, disease, Maranam, etc. Etc. means death and rebirth. So Janma, disease, death, rebirth. Prabandha. Prabandha means cycle. So perpetuation of samsara happens if you don't get this Atmajnanam. And that is an infinite loss because you have lost the opportunity to understand yourself as Brahman. And not only that, to continue in this cycle of birth and rebirth. Then we look at the third quarter, which is Bhuteshu Bhuteshu Vichitya Dhiraha. So Dhiraha, here Dhiraha is not taken as the literal meaning of courageous, but Dhiraha here is a discriminate person who has followed Karma Yoga, who has followed the religious life as prescribed in the Veda. And therefore, you have to understand Dhiraha as the outcome of having followed the religious life, of having followed Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga. What is the outcome? Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampanna. So, person who is qualified. So, Dhiraha here means ultimately means final meaning is Adhikari. So, Dhiraha Vichitya. Vichitya means through the discrimination, process of discrimination, through the enquiry, they get the knowledge. What is the knowledge? I am the consciousness in this body is one knowledge. The second part is that I am also the consciousness in all the bodies. And therefore, the divisions, the multiplicity or plurality belongs to the bodies and not to me, the consciousness. I, the Chaitanyam, am Akhandaha, indivisible consciousness. And this knowledge We saw in Gita, it was called Sarvabhutastam Atmanam Pashyati. In every living being, they see that consciousness. And therefore, here he says, Bhuteshu Bhuteshu. In every living being, I see the consciousness. And then what? Asmat, so Pretya Asmat Lokat Amrita Bhavanti. That is the fourth quarter. You break it up into Asmat Lokan Pretya Amrita Bhavanti. So at this point, you have to ask yourself, is whether I am the body or whether I am the consciousness. What is my intrinsic nature? If I arrive at the answer that my body is my intrinsic nature, I will want to hold on to the body. I will want my body to be eternal. And that is a foundation for disaster because the body is a dress. It's anatma. All anatma comes and goes. So the body is a dress that I am wearing, and dresses need to be replaced when they are no longer of any use. Therefore, such people who are detached from this body, because having understood the body is only like a dress, I don't have the attachment. I don't have the attachment to the clothes which I put in the washing machine. Similarly, when the body goes, it is, of course, you can't put the body in the washing machine, but you have to acquire a new body. And because you know that you are no longer identified or attached to this body, and such people who are detached from this body are called asmat lokan pretya. People who have already left the body, left this particular world. Asmat lokan, this world pretya. They have left the world for all practical purposes because they are no longer attached to the body and therefore they are jivan muktahas. They will have the body, but they'll continue to live as if the body doesn't belong to them. The body will continue to live until the prarabdha is exhausted. So that is the jivan mukti part. In the last quarter, asmat lokan pretya means they have dropped identification with the body and therefore it amounts to jivan mukti and amrita bhavanti. So Shankara says amrita bhavanti has to be taken as at the time of death, they merge with Brahman. They have no more rebirth. So this is videha mukti. So last quarter implies both jivan mukti and videha mukti. Now when you say they merge with Brahman or they become one with Brahman, we have to understand correctly. We must remember that they are already immortal Brahman. What has happened is as though they have now merged into Brahman. There is no movement in this merger. The merger is an understanding only. Like we can take the example of the space in the pot, which merges into the total space when the pot breaks. It's only a dropping of the name pot space. See, when the pot breaks, what happens to the space in the pot? Nothing happens. It was always part of the original space. And when the enclosure is gone, only the enclosure goes. The enclosure, which is made of clay, is called pot. So the pot name and form go, but the space remains. And the name pot space we continue to use how long? As long as the pot exists. Similarly, the name Jivatma you use only as long as the body mind sense complex remains. As long as the individuality remains, you say Jivatma. Once, and that is why Asmat Lokan Pretya. He is Jivan Mukti because he is Jivatma at that point of time. The body is there, and it is as if the consciousness is enclosed in that body. So he is called the Mukta Jivatma, the person who has Jivan Mukta Jivatma. And when the body is gone, just like the name pot space is dropped, the name Jivatma is dropped, and it is changed to Paramatma. This is Videha Mukti. So Asmat Lokat can be taken as this world, Jagat Anatma world. And this Jagat, this Anatma Prapancha is characterized by what? It is characterized by Mamakara and Ahankara. So Shankara makes it a point to mention here that Jagat means Mama Aham Bhavaha. The attitude of a Mamakara and Ahankara is embedded in this world, in the Jagat. What is Mamakara? So identification with your possessions, your relationships, and your profession. So three things are there under the heading of Mamakara: possession, profession, relationships. And under the heading of Ahankara, there is the body and the mind. So these five anatmas: profession, relationships, possession, body, and mind. These are taken as five basic anatma with which we are very deeply identified. And that is why Mamakara, Ahankara relates to these five only. Why these five? Because only these five: body, mind, profession, relationships, and possession, only these five have the capacity to cause you mental disturbance. Anything other than these five is also anatma. But the death or destruction of anything beyond these five doesn't cause us too much disturbance. Everyone is a jnani when it comes to the death or destruction of things which fall beyond these five anatmas. And why is this so? Avidya rupa, because of ignorance only. And all this is contained in the meaning of asmat lokat. And then after that, when the body is dropped, the five anatmas have gone away because the five anatmas belong basically to the body. The relationship is with the body mind complex only. So when the body mind complex is gone, then you are beyond the reach of these five anatmas. Because Atma has no sangaha, no attachments, no family, no possessions, no profession, no body, and no mind. And therefore, it's a shifting from triangular to binary format. When we say shift from triangular to binary format, we must be very clear. When we interact with the world, we need not change the language of our transactions. Like there are some, rishis or munis or godmen, you can say, who use terms like this body is hungry, this body is thirsty. There's no need to do all that and confuse everybody. You can say, I am hungry, using the conventional expression, but fully knowing that when you use the term I, you are using it as a figurative meaning. We saw it as gauna prayoga. You're using the word I in a figurative meaning, deliberately using the word I to stand for the body, knowing that you are using it only for worldly transactions. But at the back of your mind, knowing that the real I is only the consciousness principle, is only Brahman itself. And when you do that, Amrita Bhavanti, they will drop the notion that they are mortal. Becoming immortal is only understanding that I am not mortal. And Shankara says this is to be taken as Brahma eva Bhavanti. The Amrita Bhavanti has to be understood as becoming Brahman, which is what? Eliminating the superimposition that I am not Brahman. So Brahma Prapti is the elimination of Abrahma Adhyasa. So Abrahma Adhyasa Nivrittihi iti Brahma Prapti. Brahma Prapti, acquisition of Brahman or acquiring Brahman or merging with Brahman is nothing but elimination of that superimposition that I am not Brahman. And this is confirmed by Shruti also. We saw in Mundaka Upanishad, Sayoha vai tatparam brahma veda brahmaiva bhavati iti Shruti. We saw in Mundaka Upanishad, 3rd chapter. A person who knows Brahman, he becomes Brahman. Therefore, Upanishad is saying here, do not waste your life, because jnanam is possible only for a human being. And this point is driven home in Vivekachudamani, where Shankara says, in several thousand births, you have become a human being. Therefore, do not waste that. This is the only, how do you know whether the next birth is a human being or not? And how do you know when the next human birth is there? And therefore, this human being is a gift, it is a present, you can use it for acquiring Brahmajnanam and getting out of the circle of birth and rebirth. With this, the Kenopanishad basic teaching is over. These 2 chapters were meant for the adhikaris, for the people who are prepared. The next 2 chapters communicate the same teaching only. So chapter 1 and 2 is essentially Tatparim of the Upanishad. It teaches the teaching in the traditional manner. And therefore that is meant for adhikaris, students who have prepared, who have got jnana yogyata, who have got chitta shuddhi. But there may be teachers, there may be students who are not prepared, and Shruti doesn't want them to be unaware of the teaching. So the next two chapters are in a story form. The same teaching is given, of course, in a very much diluted manner, but in the form of a story. So with this, we'll stop for a few minutes if there are any questions before we go on to chapter 3. Okay.
So,
Yeah, Kush.
I'm so sorry.
Not at all. Tell me.
The five basic anatma that we spoke about, mamakara and ahamkara,
Yeah.
on doing a lot of mananam, actually, yes, it is the fact that this is the first thing which impacts you the most in life. As in how do we do more and more shravanam and assimilate the teaching? Will it dilute?
Well, there is Shastra does say that, there are two types of students who come to Vedanta Shravanam. Okay, one is the prepared one with Jnana Yogyata. So the one who comes with Jnana Yogyata, what happens to him? He gets Jnanam. But there can be students who have got the interest, which means their prarabdha is there, that I want to go onto the spiritual path, but they have not had the opportunity to do enough karma yoga and upasana yoga, and possibly they are not having the opportunity also, and still they are coming into class. So for them, Acharyas say that Vedanta Shravanam functions like karma yoga. So for them, listening is karma yoga. So all the benefits available for karma yoga will come over extended Shravanam. That is why I keep saying, until Shravanam is complete, which means until you have done at least Bhagavad Gita fully and thoroughly, all the 18 chapters, you are not really competent for Mananam, because Mananam is not related to what you are, what you are hearing. Because Shravanam by itself is supposed to be so thorough that repeated Shravanam will take away your doubts. Of course, if you really don't understand a point, you can ask. But once Shravanam is completely over, there is Jnanam is there, knowledge is there. That knowledge may have some doubts. At that point, you can start Mananam, because Mananam also includes the process of looking at the views of other darshanas. We saw in yesterday's class, unless you are examining the views of other darshanas who are giving views which can shake your views, what can shake your conviction should be there, and other darshanas are very logical, so they can shake a conviction, and therefore unless you have completed Shravanam, there is no point in going to that Mananam stage. Once your Shravanam is complete, and then you have looked at your doubts, analyzed them, and then you analyze the views of other darshanas. When you are able to, stand up to them and give your cogent arguments why they are wrong, that is the process of Mananam really happening. That is what makes your conviction really strong. So right now, what I should suggest you do is you keep on listening, and you will find that as more and more Shravanam occurs, more and more doubts go away. In fact, traditionally speaking, in the traditional classes, you are not allowed to ask questions unless the entire Shravanam is over. Only after Shravanam, you can ask questions, because you will find that what questions arise today out of the classes up to today may be addressed by the classes tomorrow. And therefore, you should have the patience to look, listen, try to understand. If there's some real problem which you can't accept, that you can ask. Otherwise, normally we say wait for Shravanam to be complete, and then only questions should be asked.
Dear Acharya, thank you.
Okay. Anybody? All right. So shall we move to the third chapter? So before third chapter starts, I will just briefly give you an outline because the story form. There's nothing much to explain when we come to the verses. So I would rather give you the background first, the whole story. So in this story, the gods and the demons, the devas and asuras, they go into battle. And this battle is won by whom? By the devas. There's a victory celebration going on among the devas, and they praise their own efforts. However, they forget to give due credit to Ishvara, because without Ishvara's grace, without Ishvara's anugraha, no battle can be won. There can be no karma which can give a result without Ishvara's anugraha, that we know. But the devas forget this, they become arrogant and they keep praising themselves only. And they say, we have won this, we have, through our own efforts, we are so strong, etc. Ishvara then decides that this is not good for the devas to be arrogant. So he wants this arrogance to be removed. Therefore, he appears in the form of a very bright, sacred being. So we call it Yaksha. In our scriptures, such a being is called Yakshaha. Yajana Yogya Yakshaha, the one who is seen, normally during whenever the Lord wants. So it's a sort of celestial being, you can say. There are many celestial beings. One of them is an Yaksha. The Lord appears in the form of a bright Yaksha, and he appears in such a way that he is not very clearly visible. He is neither too close or not too far. So the devas are unable to figure out who he is. And therefore they ask Agni Devata, who is among them, to go and find out who is this particular Yaksha. And Agni, we know, is the messenger of the gods, and that is why every offering in a yajna is offered to the Agni, because Agni is the courier service. He knows the right address of every devata, and therefore he is the messenger service of the gods. So Agni goes to Yaksha, and before he can open his mouth, the Yaksha says, "Who are you?" So he says, "I am Agni Devata," and so Yaksha says, "Okay, you are Agni Devata. So what is so great about you?" So Agni Devata says, "I am very powerful." So Yaksha says, "Okay, fine, you are powerful. How powerful are you?" So this Agni Devata says, "I can destroy the entire universe." So that is the arrogance. I am Agni Devata. I can destroy everything in the whole universe. So the Yaksha smiles, and from the ground he picks up a dry blade of grass. One blade of grass he picks up. It's very dry, and says, "It's okay. I mean, I accept that you are the most powerful force in the universe, but I don't want you to burn the universe. So do one thing, just burn this blade of grass for me. Use all your powers." So Yaksha, the Agni laughs, and he says, "One blade of grass, what is there?" So he tries, and he tries and tries and tries, but in spite of his best efforts, that blade of grass doesn't burn. So after trying enough, he acknowledges defeat, and then he comes back to the Devatas and says that I could not find out who the Yaksha is. I have failed. So then Devatas say, fine. Then they send Vayu Devata to find out. So Vayu also goes, and as before, the Yaksha asks Vayu, "Who are you?" So Vayu says, I am Vayu Devata. And Yaksha says, "Okay, you're Vayu Devata. What can you do?" So Vayu Devata says, "I am so powerful that I can blow anything from anywhere to anywhere." So what does Yaksha do? He points at the blade of grass which is lying on the ground, which Agni Devata could not burn. And he says, "Okay, fine. You just blow this blade away and I will accept that you are very strong." So this Vayu blows and huffs and puffs, nothing happens. The blade doesn't move. So he is not able even to make the blade flutter. Fine. He goes back in defeat and he tells the gods, "I have not been able to find out who the Yaksha is." Then they say, "Okay, fine. Let Indra go." So Indra is who? Indra, king of the gods. So Indra goes there to the Yaksha, and a peculiar thing happens. When Indra reaches the Yaksha simply disappears. He is no longer to be seen. But Indra is, of course, the king of the gods, and therefore he is the smartest among them all. And therefore he figures out that something is wrong. And then he recognizes that it is the pride of the gods which was the cause of the problem, and it is his own pride with which he approached the yaksha that caused the yaksha to disappear. And therefore, he becomes a bit humble, which is why humility is taken as a very major virtue for all of us. And Krishna starts the 13th chapter, Amanitvam Madambitvam. It starts with Amanitvam. Humility is the first virtue. Then what does Indra do? Indra is not able to find the yaksha. Indra doesn't want to go back and say, no, I've not been successful. So he prays. When he prays, Parvati Devi appears. Uma Devi appears. This is the story in the 3rd chapter. Okay. Then in the 4th chapter, the story continues. When Indra is blessed by Parvati Devi's presence, Indra asks a question. And then Parvati accepts Indra as her Shishya. So Indra becomes Uma Shishya. And she teaches him. What was the teaching? It was the same teaching which we have seen in the first 2 chapters. Indra then becomes a Jnani, and having got Jnanam, he goes back to the Devatas and gives the Devatas the Jnanam. Indra says, I will share the knowledge with you also. And therefore, Agni Devata and Vayu Devata also get Brahma Vidya. So the teachings which are conveyed through this story are what? Number 1, Yaksha appears in front of the Devatas, indicating what? What does Yaksha's appearance indicate? Remember, this is the extract of the story. The teaching is already there with you from the first 2 chapters. So what does the appearance of the Yaksha indicate? If you correlate it to the teaching of the first 2 chapters, what should it indicate? Come, you're not getting away with this. You have to use your head and tell us. Anybody? Otherwise, I will nominate.
That Brahman exists as,
Excellent.
kind of,
Excellent, Arunaji. So,
and gives power.
yeah. So, everything comes from Brahman, and therefore Brahman exists. The appearance simply means that, don't forget that Brahman is what has caused the victory. So, Brahman exists. And the Nirguna Brahman of Vedanta represents what? The Saguna Yaksha of the 3rd chapter. And the teaching therefore is that you start with Saguna Brahman, because Saguna Brahman is available for your for your worship, for your understanding. So Anumanam, Pramanam also you can understand Saguna Brahman. Start with Brahman, Saguna Brahman, but believe in Nirguna Brahman until you understand Saguna Brahman. And the second teaching is that any talent which you have, any glory which you have, it doesn't belong to you at all. Therefore, any pride is meaningless. And therefore, Agni and Vayu discovered that they were powerless to act without the consciousness principle, without the blessing of the Yaksha. This is the second learning. And this you saw in chapter 10 also. Krishna says that because of him alone, everything functions. Then the third learning is that Agni, Vayu and Indra, they could not know Brahman. So, this is a very important teaching. What are the aspects of a human being which cannot know Brahman? Agni and Vayu represent the Indriyas, right? And that's why in Shastra you will say that the word Deva, you will see word Deva used for gods as well as for sense organs. And therefore Agni and Vayu represent the sense organs, and Indra, being the king, represents the mind. Therefore the sense organs cannot know Brahman, and the mind also cannot know Brahman. Thus, Brahman, knowing of Brahman is not possible through either the mind or the Indriyas. Agni and Vayu could not gain the knowledge. Why? Because they were arrogant. Indra gained the knowledge by dropping arrogance and therefore becoming humble. So what happened when he became humble? Umadevi appeared. The Guru appeared. So when I am eligible for Jnanam, the Guru will appear. So that is the teaching, that you don't go and look for the Guru. When you are eligible for Jnanam, which means when your mind is ready to absorb the knowledge, the teacher will automatically appear. Just as the bee will appear whenever the flowers are ready, right? When the flowers are ready to bloom, nobody sends an invitation to the bee, right? The bee appears. And therefore, once you acquire the necessary qualification, the Guru will appear as helplessly as the bee appears in front of the flowers. That is one of the teachings. Then, after gaining the Atmayanam, Indra became the greatest among the gods. He was already the king, but he became even more glorious. And therefore, here teaching is that Brahma Vidya gives glory to a person. And therefore, the glory of a Jnani, remember, it doesn't belong to the Jnani at all, but it belongs to the Jnanam. And what is the Jnanam? Nothing but Brahma Vidya. So, any glory that is there belongs to Brahma Vidya. Brahma Vidya is nothing but Brahman. So, all glories belong to Brahman alone. And then this story also serves as a means of practicing certain upasanas, like upasana on lightning, etc. We'll see in further Upanishads. So these are the 6 learnings from the story. Okay, the story is, I've summarized the 6 learnings. Now we can look at the story itself, the verses itself, the mantra itself. Before that, any questions?
Acharya, I have one.
Yes, tell me.
Although it might have been answered in using the term story,
Yeah.
but still,
Incident. You can say incident.
incident. Okay, incident is different from story. So
Yeah.
We keep saying that jnanam moksha is possible only for the human being.
Yeah.
This was something that we had briefly covered also in the Kathopanishad.
Yeah.
Where in that it was the fact was introduced that this jnanam, Brahma Vidya, is possible in sukshma, but it was described as being unclear, like a dream. And even in Karana Avastha, it appears as though it's not there, something like that. Okay. And out here we're saying that Indra got this Brahma Vidya and then gave it to the others.
Okay.
So it is possible outside of the human body as well.
In fact, there is, and when we do Brahma Sutras, you will see there is a whole, Adhikaranam, which is called Devata Adhikaranam. So that whole Adhikaranam is devoted to one question: is it possible for the gods to get Atma Vidya or not? And Shankaracharya goes at great lengths to prove that yes, gods, because they have a body, it may not be the same as the physical body of the human being, but they are physical bodies. Physical in the sense, those physical bodies are the physical bodies of the gods because gods are jivas. And therefore, jivas will have physical and subtle body. Of course, the physical body of the gods is so subtle that the human eyes cannot perceive. But still, they have physical body and subtle body. And they have intellect. And therefore, the whole list of qualifications which Shankara discusses, which a human being has, and which the gods also have. And he arrives at the conclusion that yes, it is possible for gods also to get Atmajnanam.
So then, Acharya, it's incorrect to say that it is only the human being that can.
It is incorrect to say that, yes.
So why is it then said?
That's it. In the preliminary stage, we point out that, especially in texts like Vivekachudamani, you point out that free will exists only among the human beings, which is not really true. Because going by the discussion, it exists in the gods also. So, because gods are nothing but jivas, right? So, there are 2 varieties of jivas, you can say, the human beings, which is one step below the gods, and the gods themselves, which are also exalted human beings, exalted jivas. Both these are eligible for Atmajnana. That is the correct understanding. And Brahma Sutra will make the understanding clear. That is why it is important to study Brahma Sutras, because all these small points which are left, not touched anywhere, is touched upon by Acharya over there.
Thank you, Acharya. I need to stop saying that. That it's only the human body that.
It's okay for a start, because just to give you some extra enthusiasm that I have been born as a human and therefore,
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, so we will read this third chapter. It is very prose-like, so we just read it. Third chapter, mantra 1. Brahma devebhyo vijigне
Brahmadevi
ब्रह्मः देवेभ्यो विजिज्ञे
tasya brahmano vijaye deva
तस्यः ब्रह्मणो विजयदेवा
amahiyanta
Amahiyanta
dekshanta asmakam evayam vijayah
asmakam evayam vijayah
अस्माकम एवायम महिमेति
asmakam evayam mahimeti.
So the ta, because of sandhi rules only, it is written as ta. It should be actually te. So te ekshanta iti. That is the right breakup. So remember that, because the word ta has no meaning, and therefore whenever you see ta with a e behind it, remember sandhi rules prohibit the a from being there. Therefore it is te ekshanta. Anyway, only for those who are interested in grammar, and those who are not, of course, can go to sleep on that aspect of it. It won't affect your jnanam in any case. So he says, Brahma devebhyo vijigне. So Brahma, the literal translation, Brahma won the victory over whom? Over the asuras, for the sake of the devas, devebhya. So it's a very nice way of saying that the gods got the victory, but it was because of Brahman alone. And Brahman here is not Nirguna Brahman, it is Saguna Brahman. So this we must remember, that the first two chapters of Kena Upanishad dealt with Nirguna Brahman. This chapter is not for the Uttama Adhikari, it is for the Madhyama Adhikari. Therefore, the word Brahman here refers to Saguna Brahman. Right? So the Lord got victory. Saguna Brahman managed to ensure that the Devas got victory over the Asuras in the battle. But what was the problem? Devas did not acknowledge the fact that it was Brahman who was responsible. Therefore, you can take it as Devas did not have bhakti. So the acknowledgement of the fact that the victory belongs to Brahman, Saguna Brahman, that is called bhakti over here. So, tasyaha brahmanaha devaha amihyantaha. So, in this victory of the Lord, tasyaha brahmanaha vijaye, in this victory which belonged to the Lord, deva amahyantaha. Devas glorified themselves, or devas received the glorification. Very important, teaching here. When, especially those of us who are Vedanta teachers, when we are sitting on stage and talking, and when at the end of the class, the students come to give you the namaskara, you must remember this line. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the Lord. Why do I say that? Because this is repeated time and again. So every time, and I'm saying specifically to you all because there are many of you who will teach. Many of you will teach again and again on platforms. And it is easy to get carried away by all the, namaskaras and feet touching and all that happens. So don't be carried away. Remember, it doesn't belong to you. So society may glorify you. The students may glorify you. But you should understand that every word which came out of your mouth, it is possible only because of two things. One is the functioning of the mouth, which is because of Brahman alone. And the other is the functioning of your mind, which is again because of Brahman alone. And that Brahman, of course, is nobody but yourself. But in teaching, you are the RC. So acknowledge that it belongs to the OC. RC, whenever it receives namaskara, must mentally hand it over to the OC. So that is what is said over here. And they akshantaha, they thought to themselves. They akshantaha iti, they thought in this manner. Ayam vijayaha. Ayam vijayaha means what? This victory is ours. And asmakam eva, and ours alone. So this victory over the asuras, it belongs to us and to us alone. And Ayam mahima asmakam eva. It's a repetition. This glory is mine only, is ours only. So this is the first. I told you all this in story form. This is being told in the form of the mantras. So here Uma Devi represents Brahma Vidya. And there is a very interesting correlation which some sub-commentators pointed out. Uma Devi, when you spell Uma, when you pronounce Uma, there are 3 syllables. And when you pronounce Omkara also, there are 3 syllables. So Uma Devi and Omkara are representing Brahma Vidya. Right? At the same time, supposing you're not looking at Uma Devi and you're looking at, let us say, Saraswati. What is the difference between Uma Devi and Saraswati? From the Vedantic point of view, nothing. But from the Saguna point of view, what is the difference? Come, guys.
Saraswati is goddess of learning.
Yes.
And Bhuma Devi is Lakshmi ji.
No. Uma Devi is not Lakshmi.
Shakti. Shakti.
Uma Devi is
Durga
Durga
then.
Ma Shakti.
Then Durga.
Shakti.
Uma Devi is Parvati. Another name
Parvati.
is Shakti. Saraswati is the goddess of learning. And if you want to, bring husbands into the picture, then Saraswati is the wife of Brahmaji. And Uma Devi is the wife of
Mahadev.
Mahadev.
Though I don't think we should connect the husbands over here because, husbands are basically useless. So anyway, so if you're looking at Saraswati, then again you can break that word up correctly. Saras plus Vati. Saras represents the lake. And the lake represents what? The lake of the Vedas. The lake of Vedic words. So Saraswati can be Veda Shastram. And Vati is the name given to somebody who lives somewhere. So Saraswati is the person who is living in the Saras. Saraswati is the person who lives in the lake of wisdom. And therefore Saraswati. Anyway, that's only. By the way, the crux from this mantra is that Saguna Brahman thought that these people are growing horns. Let me go and make sure that no more damage is done. Let me pull them down a bit. So he goes. So Yaksha appears. Right? So we will read the second mantra where this is mentioned. Tadvaisham vijagnotebhyaha
Tadvaisham vijagyotebhyah
apradurbhabuva tanna vyajanata kimidam yaksamiti.
Yaksham iti.
Okay. So he says tad. So tad here means you have to relate it to the previous discussions. Saguna Brahman. Tad, that's Saguna Brahman. Why Saguna Brahman? Because we are talking in the context of creation and Nirguna Brahman cannot sustain the world. Therefore, Saguna Brahman requires Rajas, Sattva and Tamas for creation, sustenance and destruction. What did he do? Vijignyau tadha. That Brahman knew. He knew what? Tad. That Brahman knew Esham. The thinking. So tadha. Tadha Esham has to be taken as this thinking of the Devas, this arrogance of the Devas that Brahman knew. So Esham here refers to the arrogance present in the Devas who have won the victory. And therefore what did he do? Tebhyaha. Before them, Pradurbhabhuva. Pradurbhabhuva means he appeared. So he appeared as what? As the Yaksha avatara. As for the purpose of bringing down the arrogance, he appeared before them as a Yakshaha. And remember, Yakshaha is a sacred being. He is meant for puja. And he appeared, as I said, not too far and not too close. They couldn't see him very clearly. Therefore, tad na vyajanataha. They did not know that Brahman. Tad na vyajanataha. They did not know the Brahman. And what did they say therefore? Kim idam yaksham iti. Who is this yaksha? This is the question that the devas were asking themselves. So this is the key question. Kim idam yaksham iti. Who is this yaksha? They were wondering. Okay, so this is the second mantra. We look at the third mantra. Te agnim bruvan.
Te agnim bruvan.
Etad vijanihi.
Etad vijanihi.
Kimetad yakshamiti.
Kimetad yakshamiti.
Tatheti.
Tatheti.
Okay. So this is the portion where they talked to Agni. So they said, he says, Te Agnim iti abruvan. Te refers to all the devatas. So these devatas, Agnim abruvan, they said to Agni. What do they say? Jata Veda etad vijanihi kim etad yaksham iti. So they said to Agni, Hey Jata Veda, Agni has a name called Jata Veda. Okay, so this we will explain just now what it means. It says, Hey Jata Veda, etad vijanihi, please go and find out, understand this properly. Kim etad yaksham iti. Who is that yaksha? Please go and find out. So this is the words of the devas to Agni. The last word, tatheti, which means tataha iti, or as you say. This is Agni. The last word is of Agni. So Agni says, tatheti, okay, I will do what you ask me to do. So they chose Agni and asked him to go and find out who the Yaksha was. Remember, these are all just what I've already told you is just being repeated in the mantra. So there is no real Vedanta over here. So there's nothing much to comment, and therefore, Shankara doesn't want to give us let us off so easily. So what does he do? He says, fine, I will tell you what is the definition of Agni. Right? Interesting things. Because he has nothing more to say about the Vedantic part, he goes to the non-Vedantic part and he says, okay, let me tell you what is Agni. What is meant by the term Agni. So he says, Agragaminam iti Agni, which means Agre gacchati iti agragami. Agragami means what? Agre gacchati iti agragami, and agragami iti Agni. What does it mean? Agre gacchati, the one who goes in front, is agragami. Another name for agragami is Agni. So one who goes out first. And in any army, who goes out first? The messenger goes out first. The scout, he goes out to find out where the enemy is. And therefore, the one who goes first is the Agni, and therefore Agragaminaha is Agni. Agni is the messenger of the gods, the one who is always in front. And that is why in any Veda, any ritual, who appears first to you? Agni only, because all oblations are offered to Agni. That is, the name Agni comes from there. And Shankara says, okay, fine, the Devatas have called him Jata Veda. That also you must know. What is the meaning of Jata Veda? Jata Veda is another name for Agni. So he says, Jata Veda means Jatam Vetti iti Jata Veda. Ha. Jatam, whatever is born, Vetti, the one who knows, iti Jata Veda, he is Jata Veda. The one who knows everything that is born is Jata Veda. Okay. So, omniscient, right? Everything, if you know everything that is born, then you're omniscient. And Shankara wants to add a qualification over here. So he said, Sarvagnya Kalpakam. almost knowing everything. So the Shruti says, that definition says, Jataveda is one who knows everything that is born. He's omniscient. But Shankara says, no, no, no. We have to add a qualification over here. Sarvagnya Kalpakam. He almost knows everything. He is almost omniscient. Why does Shankara add this? All Mananam questions. Why does Shankara say Agni is almost omniscient?
Only Brahman is 100% omniscient. Agni cannot be.
Fair enough. But that's not the answer. Why is Agni not totally omniscient? What is the logic? Shankara gives the logic. What is the logic? What should be the logic?
One of the Pancha Mahabhuta. And
You're talking
so,
about Agni Devata, right? You're not talking about the Pancha
Ah.
Mahabhuta.
oh yes, yes.
Anybody?
Is it only, Nirguna Brahma, this being associated with Maya, Saguna Brahma?
Nirguna Brahma, is he omniscient?
Yeah,
Is he?
it's all pervading.
No, he's a Karta. Yes.
Nirguna Brahma is not a Gyata. He doesn't know
Mhm.
anything.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah.
pervading. That's it.
Mm.
So the point here is that you have to understand what is a Devata. Devata is only a Jiva. Exalted Jiva. Exalted, all right, but he's still a Jiva. And no Jiva can be completely omniscient. Only Ishvara is omniscient. Maya Sahitam Brahman. Only Saguna Ishvara can be omniscient. And therefore Shankara wants to correct that by way of a commentary over here. And he says that yes, Jataveda is almost omniscient, but he cannot be totally omniscient because he's a Jiva. And that is itself implicit in the story. What is the implication? What part of the story shows you that Jataveda is not omniscient?
They don't know who the Yaksha is.
He didn't know the Yaksha.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that is why Shankara goes into all these sort of, contortions just to tell us that don't make the mistake of thinking that he's totally omniscient. He is only partially omniscient, almost omniscient. And that is why Agni could not identify the Yaksha, which is proof enough that Shankara's commentary is on the spot. Okay. So with this, we'll stop for today. And I'll take any questions. I don't expect any major questions because it's all story form only. But anyway, even if you have.
Acharya, I have some sort of a question about the Yaksha.
Yeah.
And again, is there any significance of Yaksha or whatever? It's related to the story. Because in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 17th chapter, it is Bhagavan Krishna says that the Satvika, the one who is Satvika, they worship the Devas. The one who is Rajasika, they worship the Yakshas and Rakshasas.
So it's not relevant at all over here because remember that Mahabharata story, there's a famous incident of a Yaksha.
Yeah, and Yudhishthir.
Right? So Yaksha here is basically taken as just a celestial being, which was the form in which Uma Devi chose to appear. So here, remember, in this story, in the story part, Uma Devi is Saguna Brahman. And the Yaksha has to be taken as Saguna Brahman over here.
Okay. But okay.
So I will again repeat, in any story, in any of the scriptures, you have to take it like eating sugarcane juice.
Yeah.
Extract the cane juice, throw away the rest.
Yeah, keep asking Kena.
Kena.
Yeah.
Yes, sugar cane.
Om sir, some of our temples have these guards at the entrance and they say they are yakshas. They are obviously not connected, is it?
No. See, when you read the scriptures, you will find the names of many. In fact, Taittiriya Upanishad, there's a whole list. Gandharvas and Yakshas and
Ah,
So you have to just take them as celestial beings of various
okay.
degrees of punyam. You don't get into the analysis because there will be no end to the
Right.
analysis. The
Right,
biggest
right.
mistake any Vedantic can do, and in fact the biggest disservice you can do to the scripture, is to try to analyze this to death, and finally you will end up in so many contradictions that you will wonder why I started the whole thing at all. And that is why I say take the root, take the juice, throw away the rest. Every story, every incident can be understood only in the light of the relative Shruti teaching. You have to take the
Yes.
teaching from there, and that is why first you should know the teachings. Then only should you be teaching Mahabharata or Ramayana to anybody. If you are not familiar with the Vedanta, teaching Mahabharata can, be a big disaster.
Yes.
As they say, little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
It's very dangerous, especially
Mm.
in Vedantic thought. And there are a lot of gurus today who do this. They give their own interpretations to these incidents and do a huge disservice to us. Okay,
Yes.
so with this we'll stop. Thank you for your patience. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you,
That's
Krish.
Om.
Om
Thank you,
Om.
Acharya.
Thank you.
Thank you.